Okay, in this Tottenham video, we're going to have a look at the 5 areas that I think are holding Tottenham back after analysing the Tottenham-Newcastle match. Now, we're aware there's lots happening off the field in terms of European transfers, etc. But this video is purely going to be concerned about the players' performance, the tactics and the style of play in the match against Newcastle, and some recurring themes from the Aston Villa, the Man City, and into this match. Now, it's going to break it down into 5 areas, because at the end of the day, you've got 11 professional football players on the pitch and several more on the bench that perform so poorly. Now, if you're new to this channel and you like videos like this on Tottenham and other top Premier League teams, we do match analysis, player analysis, transfer news in the transfer window. Click the red subscribe button, the bell notification, and you'll be kept up to date of all future uploads. Now, before we get into the 5 areas, just wanted to mention a couple of points. Firstly, the Newcastle defending, I thought they organised themselves extremely well and basically marshalled that defence very well. So no disrespect to the way Newcastle played and set up and performed. I thought they were excellent. Also, just a quick point on the Harry Kane penalty. I've looked at it several times, and how that wasn't a penalty, I don't know. The Newcastle defender launched himself headfirst like a missile to intercept Harry Kane with no intention of going for the ball. But one day VAR's your friend and the next it's your enemy, and you know, at the end of the day they can't complain that that's the decision. The performance is a totally other thing. At the end of the day though, Harry Kane, I feel, didn't offer enough in the game. I think the whole game he got about 23 touches. So I think Harry Kane needs to perhaps look at his movement. But we'll get into the 5 things. So the first thing that's holding Tottenham back, the ball really was moving far too slowly with players too stationary. And it was going from side to side to side. And it was almost mechanical. You had 11 players on the pitch, virtually stood still, and sometimes the ball was on the right, it was looking to get its way out to Danny Rose on the left, and it was taking 3-4 passes, sideways passes to get that way. And for a defence that's lining up, I mean, they started with a back 3, Newcastle, but they very much dropped 2 of their midfield players in to make a back 5, and that back 5, it just gave them chance to edge across the pitch as the ball was moved slowly. So, you know, it was very mechanical, very slow, very negative passing. It needs a mix of short passes, of long passes. Occasionally that ball needs to go from the right to the left a lot quicker. It sometimes needs to go forward, diagonal, sometimes sideways, sometimes back, sometimes that way. But it was very much a mechanical. The ball was going from left to right, finding its way out to the wing. By that time, the defence had shifted across and the ball had to be played back. So to me, it stunk of the players padding their stats so that when everyone analyses their stats, they've got great pass accuracy, they've got a lot of touches, they haven't lost the ball, they haven't been dispossessed. So it looks great on a stat sheet, but does it achieve anything in the game? Not really. It really was very mechanical, very slow, very lack of movement. So that's the first thing. Now the second thing is no one seemed to want to take a risk. No one seemed to want to take a man on. Now Heung-min Son was probably the best. He was probably the only one, certainly in that first 60 minutes, that seemed to want to take a man on. You know, there was very few forward balls, there was very few players wanting to skip past a player. And when you've got a player that is prepared to just take somebody on and get past their man, it then draws other defenders across, and that then creates the space to play that assist, play that incisive pass off. So if you're forever just passing it from side to side, you're not going to get that. If you get a player that's prepared to take a man on, whether it be down the flank or go past down one of the channels or even through the centre, then it commits other defenders, which frees one of your own players up. And there was lack of anyone taking a risk, anyone wanting to try and take a man on. A good example of this was on 80 minutes after Ericsson had come on. I mean, he did move the ball a lot quicker. He did have a lot of different ranges of passes, and we did see him try and take that first man on. And he was playing sometimes a long diagonal pass, sometimes a shorter pass, sometimes in, sometimes side. So he mixed them up. And on 80 minutes, a good example of this was, I think Ericsson was sort of left centre in the Newcastle half, and he pinged a long ball out to Sissoko on the right, and Sissoko got to the byline and pulled the ball back to Lucas Moura. Now, unfortunately, he ballooned it, but there was two things that created that. He was prepared to take that risk with that pass, that long sweeping quick pass that brought Sissoko in. So while the Newcastle 5 were over this side of the pitch, he pinged a ball diagonal over to Sissoko, and the defence didn't have enough time to get across, which allowed Sissoko down the right to pull back. So that was the second thing. Now the third thing is Cal Walker-Peters, and he seems to be devoid of attacking ability. So many times he was up the right hand side of the pitch and he got up to that last 20-25 yards, and part of the issue was the ball was too slow to him, but so many times he missed that first pass that he could have played somebody in. So the first thing he was doing wrong was when there was an incisive pass on, he wasn't seeing it. He was too busy looking down, trying to control the ball. He didn't have his head up, and he was doubling back, and forever he was getting 20-25 yards from the byline and then passing the ball back in field. You see it a lot with Man City and Liverpool. They work that ball to that right hand, left hand side of the pitch, and they're 20-25 yards away from the opposing goal, and they create those triangles. So you see it with Liverpool. You'll have Trent Alexander stationed out wide where Cal Walker-Peters was. You'll have Mo Salah usually in the channel, and Henderson or one of the other midfielders inside, and they work those triangles between them to create that either channel pass or that pass to open up down the flank. And so many times Cal Walker-Peters didn't create that attacking ability. We saw it a lot more in the last 30 minutes with Sissoko, and I can put that down quite a bit. I was watching Lo Celso, although he wasn't on the ball an awful lot. If you watched his off-the-ball movement, it was terrific. So many times Lo Celso was stationed out on that right flank. Sissoko was behind him, and Lo Celso made that run inside. He either dropped inside or tried to take a run down the channel, and that freed the space up for Sissoko to go down the flank. So part of it was Sissoko's ability to get forward, but the other side of it was Lo Celso's ability to bring that defender infield to create the space for Sissoko. Now, the other thing with Cal Walker-Peters is because he wasn't able to get down that byline, get further into that last sort of 20 yards, 25 yards of the Newcastle flank, he was putting in crossers really from the wrong area, and they were such poor quality. They were so easy for a Newcastle defence to defend against. So I think I heard it the other day, somebody say young players get chances but they don't get time. Now, Cal Walker-Peters has been lucky because of injuries and because of Trippier leaving. He's had a little bit more time, but he needs to work on and create that attacking ability quickly, because he won't get much more time. There's a chance he could well be injured for the Arsenal game, but he won't get that extra time. He needs to act quickly to create that attacking ability so that Tottenham are a threat down that right flank, because while he was on the pitch, Newcastle were pretty comfortable that nothing was coming down the right. Rose was a little bit better down the left. There was a reluctance at times to play him the ball, I felt, when longer balls could have been played out when he was sat in acres of space. But when he did get to him, he was a little bit more progressive in trying to get down the flank. But it really, again, it was one of those games from an attacking point of view. It didn't really come off. So a third thing is that Cal Walker-Peters needs to create that attacking threat and quickly, because down that right hand flank, while he was on the pitch, there was nothing going down that right flank that was going to penetrate and upset the Newcastle defence. The fourth thing is that Tottenham were too busy, what I call playing balls down the centre. They were playing in those tram lines. If you were to draw two tram lines from just either side of the Newcastle goal outwards, Tottenham seemed so interested in playing through that channel. Now, when you're playing against 5 players in defence and they're playing fairly narrow, there isn't the space to play it through, and particularly when you don't see the movement from your front players to either drop off or make runs behind. It's just so easy for them to defend. So the ball was going too much centrally down those tram lines. It needed to be moved out, and it needed to be moved out a lot quicker than it was, and it needed those players that were up front within the tram lines, the Moras, the Kanes, Lamellas, to be a little bit more mobile, a little bit more movement, dropping off, some dropping behind. There was really a lack of creativity, and at that point you need to play that ball out and draw players out, and drop players off and then make runs into channels, and that just wasn't happening with Tottenham. So that was the fourth thing. Now the fifth thing was the back four. They didn't have a lot to do, but what they did was really poor, and I mentioned it in a previous video. There seems to be a lack of communication. There seems to be a lack of leadership in there. Now, Sanchez has made a few errors, all of a similar nature. Now, the goal came, it was a soft goal to give away. The back four weren't communicating, they weren't lined up correctly. Sanchez was drawn into the ball when it was out on the flank, looking to be crossed over. Joel Linton just pulled off him into that channel between the centre half and the full back. So the centre half was being sucked in and ball watching. That left that channel for Sanchez to drop into. Now, part of the problem was Sanchez not looking. He wasn't looking over his shoulder where the movement. Part of it was he was ball watching, being dropped in. Rose was the other problem. He was too far forward. He could see the danger. He can see across that line. He should be back and covering. And there didn't seem to be any communication in terms of talking to each other. There seemed to be 4 players playing as individuals. Saying that, however, I thought Toby Alderweireld did have a good game. It happened again, I think it was on 60 minutes. Virtually identical to the goal. The ball was out towards the flank. It was played over Sanchez again into that channel that Joel Linton dropped into. Rose was in exactly the position he was before, too far forward, not covering. He could see what was happening. Luckily, Joel Linton mishit it, but it should have been 2-0 for Newcastle. So Sanchez, I saw 2 errors there, one for the goal and one that should have been a goal. Couple of times where Joel Linton engaged him in physicality. He seemed to be too worried about being tied up rather than concentrating on his position. So Sanchez, for me, really hasn't improved in the 3 games I've seen him. I don't think Rose is communicating across the back. There seems to be a lack of communication, lack of leadership. And my thoughts is that now's the time. I don't know what the heck's going on with Vertonghen off the field, but there's a player that will provide you leadership, that will provide you quality at the back, and I think now is the time that he deserves that chance. And unfortunately, I think Sanchez is the one that's got to make way for him. So the performance, that's the 5th thing. The performance improved a lot when Eriksen and Lo Celso came on, but it was not enough, and it was too late. And with the derby coming against Arsenal, it needs sorting. It needs sorting quickly. But to me, there were 5 things there that were just basic play, performance, tactics that were missing from the performance. Sorry, it's a fairly negative video, but it's those are the things I saw from the game against Newcastle. Like I say, if you like the videos, like the channel, just click the red subscribe button and the bell notification, and any likes on the video. I would be interested in your comments. to see what you made of the game. Who did you think performed? Who did you think played poorly? And do you agree or disagree with the 5 things I picked up on in the game? I'd be interested to hear your comments below, and I try and respond to as many as I can. Thanks again for watching.